others. And this last week was really hard, and I want to get to that. My heart's been broken many times. Your hearts have been broken. My first heartbreak did not come from a love interest. I've been pretty lucky there. My first love, when I felt the scorpion sting, came when I lost my relationship to traditional Christianity. I remember when I was in seminary, I was the guy that asked too many questions. And when I raised my hand, I could hear a collective, ah. Because students were uncomfortable with my line of questioning. I questioned the goodness and authenticity of the institution itself. I saw Christianity as a big business, as a religion of the Roman Empire. Far removed from this man, Jesus, I saw it as top-down, hegemonic, dominant, full of exceptionalism and an oppressive force that caused more harm than good. And I saw this man, Jesus, as misunderstood or misoverstood. More of a myth, a composite of Greco-Roman Hellenistic teachings, collected together through pagan mystery religions, a story Jewish and Roman intellectuals created to pacify the masses. The Christian story, to me, was an ancient allegory invented to help maintain Roman rule. And if Jesus did live, I thought he was probably one of many Jewish rebels who were attempting to reform Judaism in that time, because it too was becoming too top-heavy with lots of rules and regulations. So you can see I was a troubled student. I knew too much, I guess. I read too much, and I became agnostic, and I withdrew. I graduated, but I was depressed because I had lost my relationship with the thing that I had loved for so long. And then, using a biblical metaphor, like manna from heaven, I found Unitarian Universalism, and my heart slowly mended. This faith gave me space to grow my understanding. It opened the gateway, new portals of knowledge and history, where I could authentically live out my beliefs and values. And it's been 20 years on this path, but this faith too has broken my heart and left me wondering about its place in the world. I've had to do a lot of reconciliation work, as I've done with Christianity. I don't have time to talk about that today. Because everywhere, everybody, every institution has baggage. And the UU baggage it sends within its large system have gone for too long unchecked. And our religion brings with it a legacy of exceptionalism and superiority. In fact, the early UUs called themselves the free church, as if everybody else's religion were enslavement. It has its own legacy of patriarchy and power over. It too, like Rome, is a top-down system of authority where the least of these in the system feel oppressed and tokenized, criticized, and scapegoated. So we have our legacy of bigotry and exclusivism that has led many people of color and those from marginalized groups, women included, to question whether we are truly here for all people regardless of race, religion, or creed. And we try, as you use, to separate ourselves from the story of Christianity, but we are a part of that story. You see, if you do your homework, we are a part of the Radical Reformation, which is a part of Protestantism. And Protestantism is connected to the granddaddy of them all, Roman Catholicism, which is connected to ancient Rome. And today, what you see is the Roman Catholic Church, which is the remnant, what's left of the Roman Empire. Rome fell in 476 CE, but its church, its ethos, its character, its flaws, its methods of law and order still exist today. These layers of oppression have their nexus in Rome. What's my point? We are all tied inextricably to this legacy of exceptionalism, superiority, and dogmatism that teaches power over instead of power with. What we do today as a nation is largely connected to Rome, and there is no escaping these historical connections to empire. The Roman Empire was dominant, expansionist, bloodthirsty, and tyrannical, and it forced people into submission using fear and torture. Roman expansion led to the development of Europe and, of course, America, because we are a product of England, and Rome expanded there too. Roman ways are our ways. They were brutal with those who opposed their rule. They did not often give fair trials. They incarcerated many innocents for speaking out against their authoritarianism, and they went to war to spread their gospel of exceptionalism. Eventually, by the 300s, they were using their state religion of Christianity to justify their domination. To understand where we are today, you have to go back to the origins. You see, I like to go to the origins of things to get the root of the matter. Sometimes you got to dig a weed up, pull it up by the root. That's where we are today, still living in the Roman Empire. Our economic systems, our political systems, prison systems, our fear-based policing, all newer versions of ancient Roman systems of governance. They don't teach you this in school, do they? And if we are to reconcile where we're going as a nation, we have to know where we come from. For 2,023 years, we have lived under top-down hegemony. Notice I said that. That's Roman time. 2023 Roman years. Not Buddhist years, not Islamic years, Roman years. That tells you the story right there. So we have to question and demand new forms of governance from the top down if we are to reach this layer where all the people are. We have to dig through, get at the heart of the matter. We have to work with the least of these, because that's where the real story is. And as Mickey said, today is Black History Month, the shortest month of the year. Much to celebrate for many of my ancestors who've done many things to make this country great, but today is a time of lament. We are lamenting. That's what Bishop Latrell Easterling in the United Methodist Church said at a service of lament at American University this week. He said, every day we see the continued reality of white supremacy, Christian nationalism, racism, homophobia, police brutality, and every other form of imposed degradation. And we deign to gather under the aegis of purported equality while we live in a nation of perpetual inequality. And so our hearts are broken again by the destruction of another human life, Tyree Nichols. And if you are black, you are doubly moaning and mourning because black cops tortured and killed this black man. Now, black-on-black crime is not something new to me. I grew up in Washington, D.C. during the 80s, during the drug war years, and I saw it. with my own eyes the results of internalized oppression and policing policies bent on arresting people who were the most desperate among us. People who sold drugs to other black people because they needed real jobs and the empire wasn't providing them. And their policy created a crabs in the barrel, fighting over the spoils mentality, and D.C. became the murder capital of the world. And what did they do to respond to that? The black mayor that I grew up with. They passed more heavy-handed policies and practices. They punished the victims over and over again. And that is what Rome did too. I did not want to watch that 26-minute video that was released of Tyree Nichols' beating, and I watched it. And it was mostly the audio that troubled me the most, the cops laughing and talking about how strong he was. And man, he must have been high on something. He high on something, man. This guy is strong. Treating him like a thing, like an object, like an animal. And it broke me. And I hated this country for many days this week. It broke many of us. We are broken people. And I felt helpless. So this is a sermon of lament, because policing in America is governed by a lack of empathy that affects mostly black and brown bodies. Arrested twice the normal rate. Policing in America is not connected to the beautiful faces in these communities, but rather it is focused on maintaining empire at any cost. It is cold and detached. It is not based in collaboration or right relationship, trust, but based in the old ways of domination. Seeing some people as weak and useless, people who need to be put away or eliminated. Most policing has become dysfunctional and stereotypical, with leaders who use tactics that do not make this world a better place. And Dr. King in 1967 was right. We might have to redo the entire structure of society. He said, and I quote, "I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. A true revolution of values will cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho Road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that the edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." King was saying that our transformation work is at every layer of society. It's a new kind of governance that this world has yet to know, built from the bottom up and not from the top down. Policing in America began as an instrument of top-down empire. After the Revolutionary War, policing was used to protect business owners. But quickly it morphed into an agency of discrimination. After the Civil War, Southern states established racist policing practices known as the Black Codes, designed to control the newly freed black population and reestablish white supremacy. These practices included the use of the police to enforce segregation and arrest black people for petty offenses. In the late 1800s to the 1900s, the modern concept of policing took shape with the establishment of police departments in cities across the country. And during this time, there was a lot of immigration and urbanization and poverty, which led to an increase in the development of new policing strategies. In the 20th century, policing in America continued to get more aggressive during the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s and the war on drugs in the 1980s, as I mentioned, to where we are today with a militarized police force. I do not condemn policing in general, but I do condemn the treatment. I do condemn some of the hiring and training practices. I do condemn the militarization of local police as if we are going to war. But I am appreciative. My cousin is a police officer. I'm appreciative of many cops who do their job well. It's a hard job. And I'm happy also that there are some local precincts, like in Oakland, California, who are embracing new relationships with their community, doing diversity, equity, and inclusion training. But the change is too slow, especially for people of color, because it costs us our lives. We have dealt with broken trust time and time again, and we have PTSD from this long night of oppression. We have so many reasons to distrust. Still wondering when white people will demand better treatment for us instead of criticizing our plight. Anyone who wants to criticize the struggle of minorities or minoritized groups in this nation do not understand history. They can only see themselves and their children and their comfort, and that is why the world is the way it is. Yes, I do believe that when enough progressive-minded folk decide that they must give up some of their comfort and privilege so that all can be free, there will begin to be a shift. We will begin to see the world we dream about. Yes, I do believe that when we as a people learn to listen more and read more and think more, especially listen to people of color, we will see more things change. Yes, I do believe that Unitarian Universalism, when it decides to be open and transparent about its legacy of exceptionalism and bigotry, we will see a new kind of faith that will rock this world. Yes, it is possible to change this system, to reduce and ultimately eliminate all of the isms through education and awareness and active efforts to address the challenges of discriminatory attitudes and practices. But it will have to be a sustained and collective effort from individuals and communities and society as a whole. Ending racism and patriarchy and hegemony is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process that requires vigilance and adaptation to changing circumstances. And if we commit to this work, one day, some child will be told a story about a world they won't even be able to recognize. They'll say, "Mommy and Daddy, they used to do that to human beings," because they will be living in a world that is racially diverse and mostly trauma-free. They will come to a diverse congregation on Sunday, and they will come up for the Wonder Box, and there'll be a minister who will invite the children up. And she will tell a story about what it used to be like.
And the story will go like this. In our ancestors' time, there was a time when the people didn't trust the police. The police were called and made a promise to protect each and every person in their community. But some police would be bullies. Sometimes they'd hurt the people, and sometimes they even killed people. And when our bodies are broken, our spirits and hearts are broken, and the people are broken. And in their grief and anguish, the people said, "Enough." And the leaders listened when the people said enough. And so they called forth some trusted people. the people who were honest and listened and cared, the people who kept their word. And those people became a group called a commission. And the commission was given a trust. How can we make the people safe again? How can we make the police safe again? And so the commission went and they talked to the people one-on-one and in groups. They talked to the children and the parents and the neighbors and the elders. And the commission read books and they studied. They went out and observed and saw how things were with their own eyes and beings. And the commission began to say, we need to do some things differently. We need to have cameras, but we don't need only to have cameras. We need training, but we need not only to have trainings. We also need for the police to know the community and the community to know them. We need to develop relationships. And so the police and the community began to do some things, but still the bullying did not stop. And so they did more. They listened more and they said, oh, when a police officer does something bad, they need to clean up their own mess. They need to say, I'm sorry. And the police need to say, we can't have anyone who's a bully here. And still more needed to get done. And so the police listened, and as the police listened, the community listened. And they began to realize that they needed not just good police, but good schools where kids wanted to come every day and they learned so much. They knew that they needed jobs so every family could provide and poverty went down. They knew that they needed nature so everyone had a deep connection with place. And as they looked at all the different parts in their community and made each better, it got safer. And as it got safer and as these changes came in, more people became safe. And the police became part of the community. And with the police in their community and the community part of the police, they began to have a time of safety, a time when there was a commission in every community that would help make the changes needed whenever harm occurred. And so the world became a better place. And we tell this story to remember that change can happen when people say enough and they work together to listen and to make change and work for safety and peace for all.
This is what reconciliation is about, and I hope that you will find a way to get uncomfortable, to talk about this sermon with your family, to find a way to do something about policing or racism or any ism. Don't accept the top-down story that we've been given as the way it has to be. Keep questioning empire and all the ways that it creates us versus them. And listen and believe what the people from minoritized groups have to say. That, my friends, is how we rebuild trust and reconcile our past sins. What do you need to reconcile today? What can you do to create a more just world? How do you rebuild trust in your relationships when it's been broken? Amen.